Hey folks, this is Kelani, with Azerite Armor being a huge topic recently with the back and forth with blues over on the forums and multiple suggestions popping up every day in comments and forum posts. You should be glad to hear that we have a new announcement for the plans to address the major concerns that many players have been vocalizing about. This blue post came up yesterday and I'll give you a link for it in the comments section below just in case you want to check out some of the finer details, but it looks like the dev team is listening after all. The major problems that they're trying to address with these changes are the overall availability of Azerite Armor of high item levels, the lack of choice or options for targeting specific traits or pieces of Azerite Armor, and the depth of the current traits that we have available to us. Let's have a look at how they plan to change the Azerite Armor system going forward. The first change is to increase the availability of Azerite Armor, but their choice of content to help with this problem might be a little bit surprising. Emissary quests will be able to reward up to item level 370 Azerite Armor pieces after this little hotfix goes live. We're not too sure when that will be, so keep an eye out on the forums, BNet Launcher and even Twitter for that announcement that this hotfix has gone live, but when it does make it into the game, doing your emissary quests will suddenly become a lot more valuable. Right now, Azerite Armor can still be an award from emissary quests, but it's capped out at 340. In the future, they will scale with your item level, so if you're 350 or so, you'll probably start seeing 355 Azerite Armor from your emissary quests instead, and as you work your way up to and above 370, those rewards should cap out at a decent level. Remember that right now, item level 370 is equivalent to heroic raiding gear or mythic plus 10 and above dungeon gear. It's literally the highest item level reward you can get from running Mythic Plus dungeons outside of the weekly chest, which is sort of what some players were asking for. A lot of players would have been very happy if they could just get their hands on some 370 gear more reliably, so the item level matches up for this little change, and I think having access to that 370 Azerite Armor gear more reliably is definitely a good thing. 385 is reserved for Mythic Raiders and the lucky few who get Azerite Armor in their weekly cache, and that's something I'm okay with, but why is this change tied in with the emissary quests instead of something else like dungeons or raids? Well, the dev team has an answer for that question too. If they pumped extra gear into dungeons, that would be great for people already running dungeons, but wouldn't really help anyone else. The same would probably go for raids too. If they pumped more loot into raids, anyone who isn't raiding wouldn't really benefit. Everyone has access to the emissary quests, whether or not you've actually been doing them or deciding to ignore them recently, but that means everyone can benefit from the additional item level pretty easily without having to go out of their way or out of their comfort zone. I think it's a pretty good compromise, especially when quite a few of the emissary rewards don't feel that impactful anymore. Adding in some higher item level gear is for sure going to spice things up a little bit. Now, just in case you were worried that this little bump won't really help us in the long run, the emissary quest item level cap is going to scale into the next patch and beyond as well. I imagine they will keep it around the same equivalent item level, so on par with heroic raiding gear of the current tier, or on par with the current Mythic Plus season in dungeon chest cap. For now that's 370, but as we explore new raids and plunder more difficult dungeons, the cap will increase and will continue to scale with our gear. So this might end up being a pretty decent permanent solution to the availability problem that we have with Azerite Armor, which is fantastic, but doesn't really help solve the other issues like traits being too bland or boring, or not being able to get the right traits that we want. Which is where some other changes come into play. While the emissary quest is something we're going to see sometime soon, these other changes won't come into play until after 8.1 has released, which is a bit of a shame, but at least we have something to look forward to. The first of these changes will appear on all new Azerite Armor when Battle for Azeroth Season 2 begins, which I guess is the cumulative term for second raid tier, second season of Mythic Plus and second season of PvP, so when we can finally hop into the Siege of Zuldazar, expect all new Azerite Armor from endgame sources to have an extra outer ring for 5 rings of traits total. That extra outer ring is going to have 2 spec-specific trait options for you to choose between, which is really interesting and exciting. That's going to increase the number of available traits on each piece of gear by a decent amount, making it way more likely for some of the better traits, or the ones you're actively wanting to acquire, to actually be on your Azerite Armor pieces. I'm looking forward to some of this gear appearing on the PTR so we can figure out how it works for sure, but more traits to choose from is always going to be a good thing with this type of system. It's not just going to be new raid gear that has the new outer ring though. Any Azerite gear that drops from Mythic Plus or PvP will also have that new ring, so the new season should be exciting for everyone, no matter what types of content you take part in. And then to address the last issue, that traits are boring, bland and don't change up gameplay, there's going to be another round of tuning to tweak things here and there, but there's also going to be new traits added into the pool which should hopefully do a lot better than some of the traits we've been dealing with so far. Apparently they've taken the feedback to heart and learned a few lessons since BFA went live, which we should be able to see in the new traits, so I'm also really excited to see what they've come up with. Of course, if they drop the ball this time, I don't think anybody's going to be trusting them in the future. My main worry right now is that even though we're going to have that extra ring, so whenever we do get a piece of Azerite Armor we should have a higher chance of getting some decent traits along with it, we still don't really have a decent way to target the pieces or traits we want. I guess the plan is to make it more troublesome than it's worth to actually try and target a piece of gear, but the Emissary Quest rewards are still random by design. We have no idea when an Azerite piece might become available because the rewards from Emissary Quests rotate constantly, and when the rewards are present we have no idea what piece of gear we're going to obtain. It is one step better than the weekly chest where we still don't have any guarantee that an Azerite piece will pop up. At least with the Emissary Quest we know that's what we're going to get, but it could still be either best in slot, not worth using, or anywhere in between. Still, more Azerite gear is better than none, I guess. I'm still not too sure these changes will bring the system above an OK rating in a lot of players' opinions. It's going to be nice having a new little carrot on the Emissary Quests, but that's only for whenever the Emissary Quests decide to reward an Azerite piece. We're going to have the same attitude towards any of the other Emissary rewards, and fixing Emissary rewards is kind of another issue. I'm all for two birds with one stone, it's just I don't think we're going to see that many more pieces from this change. With gold, artifact power, war resources and random bits of gear on the Emissary reward table as well, we might see a maximum of 2 pieces of Azerite Armor per week. Don't get me wrong, that's a great step in the right direction, but I still don't feel like Azerite Armor should have such a weird restriction on it, especially at the lower level item brackets. It's like the dev team is treating Azerite Armor a little bit like legendaries from Legion when they don't provide anywhere near the same level of excitement, power boost or effects on gameplay. Honestly, I think opening the doors and allowing us to farm up whatever bits of Azerite Armor we want would actually make the system more fun for me. I feel like the major deciding factor on how players will end up reacting to these changes really relies on the new traits being exciting and viable, with a few that change up your rotation at least a little bit. I'd love to see more effects that simulate the set bonuses from raids that we lost, instead of just stat boosts left, right and centre. We're also not too sure how that extra outer ring is going to work, especially when we swap specs. Is it going to have 2 traits total, which are both spec specific, and when you change spec those traits change along with it, or is it going to have 2 spec specific traits for every spec your class has? That seems like a bit too much, especially for the druids, but I'm really curious to see how they implement this ring. If they allow the traits to change as you change specs, that could be huge. If it works exactly like the traits we have now, where we have to reforge whenever we want to change specs, we'll still have the same problem of needing to collect extra gear. At least that should be easier after the Emissary change and the extra outer ring on gear after the Siege of Zuldazar opens. All that's left to do is wait. So remember to keep an eye on those Emissary quests jumping up in item level, and patch 8.1 might reinvigorate the entire Azerite Armor system enough to put out most of the fires surrounding it these past few weeks. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that these new traits are actually something to get excited about, but the Emissary quest change and the extra ring for spec specific traits should still go a very long way to keeping the system bearable. I'm really happy that we're getting some solid info about these changes before BlizzCon, though I guess the dev team probably wanted to do a little bit of damage control. What do you think of the currently planned changes, and do you think the extra pieces from Emissary quests and an extra ring of traits will be enough to save Azerite Armor? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.